Tom, Triss, E3 is finally happening. It wasn't real until now, but Nintendo has finally announced when they're going to be at the show, or how they're going to be at the show. And of course, that is digitally this year entirely, as the entire E3 show is. And the important details is that on June 15th at 9 a.m. Pacific time, we're getting a 40-minute Nintendo Direct, mainly focused on 2021 games. They say mainly, so that's kind of interesting. Next, though, is it's going to be followed immediately by a roughly 3-hour-long Treehouse Live. So it does seem like it's a little bit smaller scale this year because we're only talking about 1 day's worth of coverage rather than 3 days worth of coverage. But most of this big stuff is usually on day one anyway, so I don't know how much of a difference it really is. Yeah, and I think that's most of the details. That's most of what we know. So that'd be good for us to get together, talk about the general expectations for it. We will be having a more specific predictions discussion in the near future, probably closer to E3, but this one's more focused on the broad scale of things, although we'll be touching on some of the main games we're expecting, I suppose. So let's go ahead and start with you, Triss, because you did the update for us this morning.
Right.
What do you think about this? Any surprises here, or is this pretty much what you expected?
I think I'm surprised that it was announced today, honestly, because everyone was expecting it to be like last week or the week before that, going off of like years of announcement trends from Nintendo. So to announce it this close to the show was honestly pretty surprising. But I'm glad they finally did it and got out of the way, and the fact that it doesn't actually tell us things that we weren't expecting. So it's pretty much along the lines of what we thought it would be, except, as you mentioned, instead of like 3 days of Treehouse, it's just 1 day, which is probably just because their E3 is giving everyone like 1 day for a bunch of things. One thing I did notice when looking at how each of the different Nintendo accounts tweeted it out, though, is that Nintendo UK specifically says it's 3 hours of deep dives on gameplay for a handful of Nintendo Switch games, which means, thankfully to some, it's not going to be E3 2016, where it's exclusively Breath of the Wild.
I mean, you say unfortunately, but I mean that was Breath of the Wild.
No, and that would be amazing. That actually would be amazing. Personally, I would take that, but it means they're using their 3 hours to cover a lot of things, basically.
Exactly. No, that is actually good to know. And I think, although how funny would it be if it ends up being Breath of the Wild 2, Game Builder Garage, and Mario Golf? Those are a handful of games.
It's true. It's true. They could, because Game Builder Garage comes out, like 4 days before this?
4 days before. They can show off all the games that people have made at that point. No, I think Nintendo's actually usually pretty good, where at E3 especially, like I don't care, whether something came out like days before or not, they're usually not talking about it. So I'm really not expecting that. But Tom, what's your general take on things at this point?
I feel like it gives us a better idea of how E3 is set up in general, like Triss said, about having everyone make it in their own day. Like before, it's everyone got their own kind of 2-hour time slot, and they could jostle around before E3 and have people play it. But without people playing the games, like it's just giant, longer announcement streams. So that Nintendo always likes going last, so this is at the end of E3. Makes sense. And the unfortunate thing is, like, it's way further away now for us, so that's more waiting.
Yeah.
Until that point, yeah.
Yeah, as a fan, that's disappointing. As one who's inundated with work, that's actually awesome. So I actually appreciate that, because I have like a few projects coming up. I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna fit it all in. At E3 ends up being sooner than it might be, or than this. Yeah, but it is interesting though this year that they are falling on the very last day of E3. Like typically, even though they're the last press conference or direct or the digital presentation, it's still at the start of the show. It's still day one. You still have 2 more days coming after. This time, this is it. We're gonna get this 3.5 hour block roughly of Nintendo focused content, and then the show's effectively over, I think. I think that's basically it.
You know what it might be, though? It might be a case of trying to combine with some of the ideas they did last year, where there was no E3, and then they had, there was the Pokemon Presents back in 2020 of June, there was the Sakurai Presents for Min Min. We might have something like that in this case, too, where maybe we'll see something for the upcoming Pokemon games, maybe we'll see something Smash. We're not talking predictions right now, I'm just saying maybe we'll see those, but then they won't really get covered during Treehouse. They'll specifically say, hey, later, or maybe they won't say it, but they'll do it. Later that month, or this month, they'll have their own dedicated presentations for more info on those after E3.
Right.
Yeah, you could I guess in theory, maybe even announce the Smash character and then say Sakurai Presents will be happening in a week or two.
Yep.
So what I'm curious about is what do you make of this mostly 2021 talk that Nintendo mentioned? So we know there's going to be a handful of games with deep dives. Do we think some of those are going to fall into 2022? Like, or are they going to be relegated to maybe smaller announcements? I mean, I think the big question is this telling us what Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out?
I don't think this actually has anything to do with that. Like, I think this is Nintendo being a little more truthful than usual, considering they usually say through the end of the year announces Metroid Prime 4 anyway. Like something like that. Like they usually announce a small handful of games, but usually they announce games that are either not even on track for within the next fiscal year or something coming like the next spring. So I think the fact that they're emphasizing, in quotes, mostly 2021 games means there will obviously still be some that are outside of that time period.
Yeah, I agree. There's got to be one or two dangling carrots out there to look forward to. Especially this, I'm questioning now, even if they will have new hardware at this show, like I guess you could and have it a blowout showcase, but that's hard to do. I guess you have 40 minutes and 3 hours, but to divide that between the current generation and the next generation, that would be a tricky balancing act unless some of these maybe are cross-compatible.
Yeah, that is kind of the elephant in the room. Is there have been these rumors, these rumblings of a Nintendo Pro or Nintendo Switch successor to some degree happening at some point. The rumors heating up recently with the announcement possibly being imminent, and that very well could still be the case. And I'm still inclined to think if it does happen, it probably would be before E3.
Yeah,
I think Nintendo has shown that they like to get the kind of the like those hardware-focused announcements out of the way before the show. They may not show it, but it'll give us a heads up that it's coming to kind of like get those early headlines out of the way. That way, a lot of the attention will return to the software or how the software is enhanced by the new hardware. But yeah, it's weird because there were some people like speculating or suggesting it could happen last week, and that didn't end up happening. There's still plenty of time. We still have the entirety of next week, and that's plenty of time for Nintendo to slip an announcement out there if they want. But at this point, it's hard to say whether it's going to actually happen, before E3 or possibly later in the year. Like, I think there's a very good chance that it could still be announced this year, but they don't mention it at E3. They just want the focus to be purely on the software. They will find out later how they're possibly augmented by new hardware.
And they even said software in the announcement too. So
good point. Yeah.
I do think that if we see it at all before E3, it could be like a small video, maybe next week, just saying like, look, here's the better version of Nintendo Switch, kind of like when they introduced the Switch Lite, more so of an advertisement. Like, here's a quick little video on things it can do, and then the only thing of it we see during E3 is like during the Treehouse live stream, a couple people say, hey, and as a reminder, we are actually playing these on the new Switch Pro, so go check that out. And then that's all they say on it. Otherwise, they just keep playing.
That's a great point. I mean, Nintendo doesn't take much. Nintendo doesn't need a whole lot of time to introduce a hardware successor, as you said. I mean, not even successor. I feel like that's probably overstating what it actually is.
Yeah.
I mean, they announced the entirety of the Switch platform in a 3-minute trailer, and that was it. And then, as you said, they had like the Switch Lite as what was effectively just like a press release.
Yeah.
And I think that would give the Pro or whatever it is a little bit more attention. But I do think almost putting too much attention on whatever this next Switch is almost undermines the point of it. Like, it's not the idea. I assume, this is purely my own speculation, is not meant to replace the current Switch, at least not anytime soon. It's meant to just be a way of continuing the platform into the future, but it's not, the current games and the games in the foreseeable future will continue to work fine on the Switch. So, and I don't think Nintendo wants to, undermine that message. Which again, I assume is what the message will be when this eventually happens, whether this year or not. So yeah, we'll see. That's kind of the big question. But I guess in terms of like these other handful of games then, so Breath of the Wild 2, obviously gonna be there, right? Like we just saw the brand new Horizon game, and it's so interesting because that game came out just a few weeks before Breath of the Wild. So these two sequels are in very similar developmental timetables. And I forget, was Horizon 2 given a release date? Is that next year? No release date yet. That's it. We don't know. So I wonder, could Nintendo get away with that too? Show off if Breath of the Wild 2 is super in depth. We finally find out like what's going on there. No release date.
I'd be so disappointed.
It's so sad.
I can see that happening, although didn't Aonuma kind of apologize for a delay last time? So they kind of mention when the release window is. But if they really want, all they have to do is just, say it's coming and look forward to it.
Yeah, you were talking a release window for the original Breath of the Wild, right?
I
don't think we have one for Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah, it's or
the closest we've had is Aonuma. I think before Skyward Sword HD was revealed, talking apologizing for not having more to show yet, but we'll see more later this year.
That's what I meant.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Right. Okay. That makes sense. So, how deep of a dive do you think we might get for Breath of the Wild 2? Because if they are showcasing, I mean, Triss, was the wording they used, a handful of games, is that in reference to the Direct, the Treehouse Live, or is it even able? Are you
that was specifically in reference to Treehouse Live? Is because the tweet says immediately after the Nintendo Direct, continue watching for roughly 3 hours of deep dives on gameplay for a handful of Nintendo Switch games in Nintendo Treehouse Live.
Got it. Okay, so I mean that's actually what we typically expect from Treehouse Live anyway.
Yeah.
So I wonder what other games that they might explore deep into. Of course, Breath of the Wild 2, I imagine will probably consume about an hour of that. I would expect, or between that and probably developer questions and answers, or interviews rather. Trying to think of what else. I mean, I think the other stuff that they focus on will probably be the surprises. That's usually how it goes. The games we're not expecting, like the Mario parties, a new Kirby game or something, things of that nature.
Exactly.
It'll be interesting if Platinum Games shows up with Bayonetta 3. I mean, to see if that relationship is continuing, and they just said, wait because it's happening on the new hardware, or if they're saying wait because maybe something happens where they just have to wait out their contract and release it on other platforms, which I'd hope doesn't happen. But you never know, based off of their cagey kind of wording about it.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a short one, though. I don't see that taking out more than 20-30 minutes, I think, in a treehouse.
I mean, I think any amount of Bayonetta 3 at this point would be nice. But I think there is a good chance we do see it there as well. Metroid Prime 4, I think, is the bigger mystery. I mean, because it was rebooted after we found out about Bayonetta 3, so it is still presumably at an earlier stage in its own development. It has been, though, over 2 years at this point, and I do think we will see it in some form. I don't think we'll get a playable version of it on Treehouse. I would love to be surprised by that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement there.
Yeah, that'd be tough. I mean, they could have a vertical slice demo if they worked really hard and had their ideas kind of nailed down early, but I almost rather that not to happen, so they've been exploring more ideas in the time, and just a trailer like Chris kind of things.
Yeah, we've heard how much of a pain those vertical slices can be, especially for a game that's still in very active development. Whereas I suppose for Breath of the Wild 2, I would imagine probably a little bit easier considering that game's got to be nearing the end of its development cycle.
Hopefully.
So they could almost put the full build up there that they have now. Just play from the beginning and see what happens.
I do think regarding Breath of the Wild 2. And remember, everybody, this is not our predictions discussion yet. We're just talking the big obvious ones.
Right.
So our predictions can be more fun. In regards to Breath of the Wild 2, though, I think it's not going to be one of those... It's not going to be what happened with Smash and E3 2018, where it's the entire presentation. I see it being either the opening trailer or the closing trailer. Kind of like the closing trailer to it was to E3 2019. Where it's one last thing, and then here's Breath of the Wild 2. Or they start with it to have a super strong start to the whole show. But then it'll probably be the first... Actually, you know what? It's going to close it, and then it's going to be the first thing to do on Treehouse. That's what I think they'll do there. And then it'll be... Maybe they'll show us two different things with it. I obviously we don't know anything about it, so we can't say for sure what those two different things would be, but I imagine they probably do, here's how exploring in this game differs from Breath of the Wild, and then here's how, I don't know, combat differs from it did in Breath of the Wild, and then those two segments would each be like 20-30 minutes.
Right. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah, ending the show with Breath of the Wild 2, so you can go right into it with Treehouse Live. And you know, that would act as a carrot for the entire presentation. Everyone knows it's coming. It's a matter of when. I have been picturing in my head for some reason opening with it, but I think your strategy makes more sense. And Nintendo does often like open up with some kind of surprise or something that we weren't quite expecting. Maybe in this case, that rumored DK Donkey Kong game from the Odyssey team, or Galaxy team.
Yeah, as long as they have something there to encourage people to keep watching the whole Treehouse. I guess, to have people already wait for Breath of the Wild 2 at the beginning of the presentation, and then like continue, you'll get a lot of people watching that whole time. And maybe if you already have a surprise announcement for the end of the Treehouse, they'll stick around for that.
That could be too. Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, just with everything being condensed into one, this year's E3 is going to be very different for Nintendo and for us, for fans, for everyone.
For everyone, yeah.
And that everything is, everything's online. It's all condensed into a single day for Nintendo, at least, barring possible third-party announcements, of course. And that's actually kind of nice. Like, we're able to cover from home. Like, we can hop into an analysis right away this time, rather than having to wait until we're back if we even get around to it.
You say that like we're only doing one analysis, Andre.
Oh yeah, there's probably be quite a few of them. Yeah, so I'm almost in a way dreading it this year. But I think I do like that everything's condensed into one day. Because I remember with Breath of the Wild 2, with Breath of the Wild, that analysis nearly straight up killed me. I spent months on that stupid thing, but I had to grab. There were so many. There was the trailers. There were the multiple Nintendo sessions on Treehouse Live. There was all the footage recorded from everyone. All the outlets or YouTubers or just random people. From the show floor. I had to look through almost all of it.
Yeah, because
every single video.
Because everyone got to play that demo. So yeah, there was so much to go through for that.
There was so much to do, yeah. And I remember playing my version of the game at E3, looking at like the 20 other TVs around me, and everyone's doing something different. I'm like, God, I'm screwed. And consolidating all of that. So we're not going to have quite that this year, for better or worse. But I am really curious to see what they end up showing in Breath of the Wild 2. What we don't really know anything about the game. Like it has caves, and then Zelda is there. I mean, we really don't know a whole lot about how it's actually going to play, and that's what's really exciting. So I do kind of wonder what that demo is going to look like. Because they can't just show off, right now, like the appeal simply. I don't think it could simply just be, oh, you can explore wherever you want. They've done that. It will be here, of course, but that's not going to be enough to make it exciting, I think. There's going to be some kind of hook or distinction between the first game to make it really, sell itself.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I would say what it might be, but that'd be a prediction for a predictions discussion.
Good point. Exactly. Well, any other thoughts, everyone, on anything related to Nintendo's announcements today for their E3 showing?
I have one question for you guys, which somewhat delves into speculation territory, so we're not gonna hang on this one too long. But do you guys think we'll see? Because obviously we'll see Smash during this. But do you guys think instead of a Sakurai Presents, we'll just have Sakurai get a segment during Treehouse Live and do it live?
He very well might. That would be awesome, actually. But we're definitely going to see a character during the actual direct.
Yeah.
So we'll see the character, and I think it's possible. Now that it's remote, I think it's even more likely than ever that he may have a segment at the show, because he doesn't have to travel for it this year, which is nice. So yeah, I think that could happen. I think that'd be cool. Although I was gonna say, can he fill like a whole segment himself? I'm like, no, he definitely could.
Definitely.
Yeah. He has already done it multiple times effectively.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, Sakurai, the 3 hours is for everyone.
Someone's got to smash a controller out of his hand.
But I wonder how many takes he does, and like how many edits are in his presentations. But he's kind of doing them by himself. Maybe if he's got the swing of things and he could just play it against Treehouse members, they can talk about it while they're playing.
Yeah. Might be rough on the
And I
translator,
think,
but yeah.
and I think hasn't he had a segment at E3 before too?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's not even anything new. So I think there's a good chance that happens. And yeah, that'd be fun. Any other thoughts, everyone, on anything related to the show that's not a specific prediction?
I really hope that one year they can try to just figure out demos for everyone in this type of situation. I mean, I guess the downside is maybe people could data mine them, but having demos over a short period of time, I think really makes sense. I wish it could happen.
I think we could get a demo for Mario Golf released during that time, and then maybe I don't know, maybe they'll actually play it during Treehouse Live to show us like more on what's it called, Battle Golf or something like that.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Golf.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be cool. I mean, the game's coming up pretty soon, so I wouldn't be too surprised if they are showing it there. Although there have been similar cases before where, like, ARMS, I think, released during E3, effectively, and I don't recall they showed much of it at the show, if anything.
Did they do this with, because ARMS had its own centralized direct, but
it did,
didn't they do this with Tennis Aces? There was, like, around the time of E3, there was that timed demo, and then they did, and then they had a segment for playing it during E3. I think. I could be totally misremembering that.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I totally forget. But in any case, it would be awesome if they did lean into the digital side of things. Provided people with at least a demo, if not multiple demos. How cool would it be if everyone got to play Breath of the Wild 2 in their house? That'd be amazing. That's not going to happen, but that would be incredible. Especially with, as we were saying earlier, data miners out there. Like, they would just crack that game open, you know? So, yeah. All right, what's your hype level at, everyone? How excited are you for E3 now that we know Nintendo's plans finally?
I'm at a 9. I'm always so hyped for E3, and I'm like never let down.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I probably in that 8.5 to 9 range with multiple titles, not just one title. That's exciting.
Yeah, I'll go, I think 8.5 as well. I mean, these plans fall right in line with basically what we expected. The only real surprise is confined to a single day. But it's not really a huge difference because, like I said before, most of the big games are on day one anyway, with days 2 and 3 either adding more to it or showing off smaller titles.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be a fun time. We don't fully know what to expect beyond some of the, beyond at least an obvious inclusion. And yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But with that said, it doesn't mean we don't have some of our own ideas for what could be there. So of course, stay tuned for our upcoming predictions discussion sometime within the next week or so, in which we'll give all of our official predictions for the show, including more Breath of the Wild 2, Smash Brothers, and other surprises that could be at the show. I'm really excited. I think most of you are too. So stay tuned for that. And with that, we are done here. So thank you for watching, everyone. If you liked what you saw, consider clicking on that subscribe button for tons more from us at E3 2021 and everything else Nintendo and otherwise related to. With that, we'll catch you later. Bye, everyone.